Hello everyone. I'm going to review some Super Nintendo games and just talk about a bit my favorites, my very favorites. This system was really important to me. I was at the age that it was marketed towards right when it came out, and I had lots and lots and lots of fun. So let's dive right in. I'm going to speak for a while about some of the games that really captured my imagination and gave me a lot of happiness. Beginning with ActRaiser, a really exciting cross-genre RPG. It had some like strategy elements and some build and develop your area elements, as well as being an action side-scroller. Highly regarded as one of the greatest titles. Some other RPGs got a lot more of my attention, but I do remember playing through ActRaiser, and one day I hope to revisit it. The Addams Family titles are very exciting. Really fun platformers with a quirky art style, good controls, and you were exploring a haunted mansion, so what's better than that? Highly recommended for casual gameplay, but also quite challenging. I also really enjoyed Blackthorn. You were a rock and roll type, kind of an anti-hero with a shotgun, taking on some demons in kind of a futuristic jungle universe. You could hide in the shadows, you had to develop your strategy, and it also kind of had some like exploration puzzle elements. It was very, very well done, and it created a nice dark atmosphere that appealed to me greatly. I think I rented it several times. I never beat it though, it was a challenge to me. Another title that was very exciting that I didn't really play was Breath of Fire. My RPG time was spent with some of the other juggernauts, but one day I may go back and enjoy Breath of Fire. Okay. Castlevania, unfortunately, when I was quite young, I didn't play it on the Super Nintendo, but later I did, and all of the side-scrolling Castlevanias are amazing and well worth your time. The horror genre and the satisfaction that I got from playing the Castlevania series, it's really hard to relate how awesome Castlevania has always been. The 3D ones and the modern realm of Castlevania titles is pretty foreign to me, but I was right there day one when Castlevania was being released for those early 8 and 16-bit systems, and really they did something that no other company had ever done. Chrono Trigger I played a lot. My memory is vague about it. A couple of other RPGs were my go-tos, but I got all the way through Chrono Trigger. I'm not too certain. I probably beat it. I'm not really too certain, but it did create an awesome atmosphere, and I love the quirky characters, and there was just a really, really, really well-developed storyline with some exciting twists and turns. Chrono Trigger. Alright, Contra 3, one of my all-time faves. The Contra series, I played through the first Contra so many times, and even though Contra is extremely challenging, while you're playing it, there's so much happiness and satisfaction in meeting those challenges that you do want to just keep on playing it over and over again. And it was extremely successful. They created an amazing world, the controls were perfect, and just having these awesome science fiction weapons and taking on the alien hordes really created a lot of happiness for me. And the Contra franchise, especially now since I'm more of a casual gamer, I don't really have the time or inclination to play a long RPG. Um, I'm really thankful that things like Contra 3 exist, because it never ever gets old. There's always the satisfaction of dodging the bullets and taking down the enemies, and it's always challenging and always rewarding. Okay. Aladdin is an incredible game. It's pretty much hit every single target. It was fun, light fodder. It was challenging, but not too challenging. And I played it a couple years ago all the way through and beat it, and I enjoyed every single moment of it. So Aladdin, to me, is probably the best Disney game that I've ever played. Not that I'm really that knowledgeable about a different range of them, but the Aladdin universe is exciting to me. They created a really great world. I don't think I've ever really seen the movie, but that game is really a standout. Donkey Kong Country has always been fun for me, but something about the art style, I wasn't really into it back when it came out, and I'm still not really super into it. It's not that I don't like the look of the game, but it was it was a little bit different, and the gameplay is good, but for me it seemed a little loose. Like I didn't have complete control over the Donkey Kong character, so although the controls are really good, it just felt more slippery than it actually was. That always created a little bit of a problem for me, and I had fun with it, but I never really stuck with it. Earthbound was another one I didn't get into. It's an RPG title that one day I should probably go back and visit. There are some really hard hitters on the Super Nintendo console. Some RPGs that are considered masterpieces. And it was really a good console for that. The Genesis had its share, I think, but I never ever really got to play the Genesis that much. I borrowed one for a while. As far as I'm concerned, the Genesis, there's only one game franchise on the Genesis I'm concerned about, and that is Golden Axe. And all three of the Golden Axe games are really awesome. And I liked Altered Beast. But that's about it. Although it had its share of RPGs, too. Oh, F-Zero was amazing. I used to draw diagrams about moves I had developed on F-Zero, things that weren't really in the game, but just using my imagination. So F-Zero still stands out as my favorite racing game of all time. Although I've never really been super into racing games, once you mix in kind of a sci-fi universe, that automatically hooks me, and the controls were great, and I remember playing F-Zero for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and I can still do that. It's awesome. Final Fantasy III. Yes, I played it all the way to the end. I loved it. I lost the ninja because I didn't wait long enough to save him. I probably used the strategy guides and all that, so I got the 2 secret characters, and it still is the most epic and sweeping storyline on any game I've ever played. I did play Final Fantasy VII when it came out, and I'm pretty sure I beat it too, but 7 was where I stopped with the Final Fantasy franchise. My friends were going bonkers over Final Fantasy VII, and I loved it. It was very good. Nowadays, revisiting these titles, I don't really have the patience for them anymore, but Final Fantasy III shaped me. It was such an incredible storyline, and I think all the critics agree that it's one of the best stories ever in the Final Fantasy game, and I feel very lucky that when Final Fantasy III came out for the Super Nintendo, I was right there. I was at the perfect age that they were marketing the game to, and I was into fantasy games and into RPGs, and I was there for it, and it was amazing. Mystic Quest was a much lighter game. They made it far more casual, less linear, and I think I played through quite a bit of that too, but it wasn't really like Final Fantasy III. Oh, those Final Fight games, weren't those a little bit of casual fun? Yes, they were. On occasion. Alright, flashback. This is one of those eerie ones, one of the ones that people look back on as kind of groundbreaking. So I remember it fondly. And of course, it was very hard to understand what was going on or to get very far in it. But flashback. It's listed here on this list as a cinematic platformer, and it created a really, really unforgiving science fiction world. That's right up my alley. Gradius 3, the moment I turned on Gradius 3 after renting it, I was hooked. I wish I knew more about that style of gameplay and some of the other ones that were quite popular in that style, but Gradius was one of the best, and still I think it stands up to the test of time. It's still fun, it's rewarding, the challenges are there, you've really got to be on to do well, and as a side-scrolling shooter in outer space, unmatched in my opinion for the Super Nintendo. Okay. I'm going to have to mention another RPG, Illusion of Gaia, that I did not play too much of. My friends were really into RPGs too, some of them a little bit more into RPGs than me, and they stuck with the fantasy hobby a little bit further into their lives, like they got into tabletop war games, fantasy stuff like Warhammer. They were far more into pen and paper role-playing games. Although I did play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons in middle school, I kind of got out of it, and then we did some of like the really early volumes of the White Wolf universe, the vampire games. So I kind of got out of it at that point, but some of my other friends just stuck right with it. And I did get into medieval reenacting. That's definitely something for another video. But for me, I really stepped down of gaming and stepped down of RPG playing for a while, and then I got into Baldur's Gate and Diablo 2 on the computer system, and then that was basically it until recently when I played Skyrim. And I'm thinking about getting Diablo 3. Actually, I'm just looking for a little bit of free time to download Diablo 3 and play it. I've only played the demo. Okay. Jurassic Park was pretty fun, top-down action and puzzle game. And I remember it being fair but challenging, and it took me into the world. I was a fan of the film when it came out, and it was a good tie-in. Okay, as far as the fighting games, I was really into Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, especially Mortal Kombat. And when Killer Instinct came out, I couldn't really get into it, all those combo moves and everything. I wasn't really very passionate about any of the combatants. And although I did play it a little bit, it didn't really capture me. We'll get to my favorite fighting games later, but I'm excited to see that they are going to release another Killer Instinct game in 2014. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Maybe the greatest game released for the Super Nintendo. I really wish that I had played some of the later Zelda games. And I know there's one that's kind of more realistic that came out over the last couple of years, where Link is, like he turns into a wolf somehow, and Zelda 1 and 2 and Link to the Past were the ones I played. I had a Game Boy, but I didn't have the Game Boy Zelda game, and all the ones after that I've not played anything else, and it's quite a shame. Lost Vikings was a great puzzler. You were 3 different Vikings, and each one had different abilities. One could shoot arrows, and one was great at blocking with his shield, and the other one was a fast runner and could jump. And you had to figure out puzzles based on those 3 skill sets, and it was a very good puzzler. It probably unlocks some parts of my brain that that teachers and mathematics classes couldn't. Oh, I had Mario Paint. I spent a lot of time on Mario Paint. Finally, before I sold all my stuff on eBay, I looked back and I had done Nirvana's Come As You Are on Mario Paint. So I was already into rock and roll and getting out of gaming and video gaming at that point. But there was that little bit of crossover. And Nintendo Power released some pretty awesome magazines that would give you like templates that you could do characters from your favorite games and just sort of block them onto like little animations you could make. You could also add music to those. So I had like a rock and roll guitar player, probably a Kurt Cobain character, twiddling his fingers on the strings while Come As You Are played, and I thought that was lots of fun. Alright. Mega Man on the Nintendo was more fun to me, but I did play through Mega Man 7. I prefer the older art style and the challenge of the older ones. I wish I could have played some Mario Soccer back in the day. Sorry, Mega Man Soccer. That's such a crazy mashup. Mortal Kombat 2, my favorite. I knew all the fatalities, the friendships, everything. Like I knew every character's move. I played it incessantly, and I was a great fan of Mortal Kombat 2. The whole universe they developed, and I love the new Mortal Kombat that's on the Xbox. It's my favorite fighting game of all time. Just amazing. Had a lot of fun playing NBA Jam. Everyone was super into NBA Jam. Ogre Battle, an incredible strategy RPG, kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics. And I played it quite a lot. And it's gone down through time as one of the more popular games. When people look back at the strategy fantasy style. Out of This World, like Flashback, another crazy one. The title says it all, Out of This World. It blew our minds. It's still mind-blowing. Sometimes games come along that are just out there. Paperboy, I loved on Nintendo. I hope I played it on Super Nintendo. I spent lots of time playing Pilot Wings. It was groundbreaking, and it was difficult, and it was exciting. And Pilot Wings, they deserved every penny they made off of Pilot Wings because it was really awesome. Primal Rage I was more into than Killer Instinct because I love the characters, although I didn't really learn their moves or rent it that much or have anybody to play it with. So, but the second tier of fighting games, I think that it's pretty awesome, and I would love to see an update of Primal Rage onto one of these modern systems. Rock and Roll Racing captured my attention. I loved it. It was fun. It was very well designed. You could upgrade your car. The challenge was there. It was fun to play with friends. The music was great. It was extremely successful. Rock and Roll Racing, for me now, is something that I can revisit a lot. R-Type 3 I should have played, being such a Gradius fan. Oh yeah, Samurai Showdown. Pretty groundbreaking, but once again, like Primal Rage, I didn't play it as much. Mortal Kombat just does it for me. Secret of Mana I recently bought on iOS and played it all last summer because it was my favorite action RPG of all time. And I still remember the boss music of the very last boss, and everything about Secret of Mana was incredible, and I still consider that one and Final Fantasy III to be my two favorite RPGs of all time, I think. Oh, Shadowrun, maybe that deserves mention that Genesis Shadowrun was different, much darker and grittier and better. I think the gameplay style was a little different. So Genesis, I think, trumped Super Nintendo on Shadowrun. But I tried and tried and tried to play Shadowrun. I wanted to do the tabletop RPG, but I never really sat down and actually got to do it. So what better fix than having it on Super Nintendo? But I think that nowadays I could probably figure it out, and they were really, really successful in creating a nice, gritty, urban, futuristic world. But I got stuck. Every time I played it, I got stuck at this one part and just ran around everywhere and couldn't figure it out. So, and plus I was even aware at that time that the Genesis version was better. For whatever reason the Genesis version was better, it's agreed that it was. So SimCity was super fun on Super Nintendo. These sim games like these Sims and some of the later stuff, like I played Sim Ant on the computer but not on the Super Nintendo. Something about SimCity really captured me. Everybody loved SimCity for a time. Okay. It deserves mention. SOS. You were on a sinking ship. First of all, you're just doing the most casual stuff, walking around on like a Titanic sort of a vessel, going about your life. And then the wave comes and knocks it over. You have to escape off of the ship and try to save people in the meantime. And it took advantage of the same Pilot Wings technology that would let the screen sort of twist. And what they did was make the boat twist. So you had to sort of like climb up these dangerous obstacles as the boat churned. And you had like a limited time, like 1 hour to escape off of the boat. And it created it created a sense of urgency. It created a very unique gameplay style. Well, looks like we're going to get everything into one video. Although I haven't had quite so much to say about the Super Nintendo console, I spent the most time playing it and I have the most fond memories of it. Like for example, Star Fox, when it came out, I was a Nintendo Power subscriber. Everybody was very excited about it and I loved it. I did try to play it again recently, and it's kind of like Final Fantasy VII. It's hard to get past the dated graphics, but back then it was incredible. And just to be on the cutting edge, I mean, it's a feeling I've lost, of course, with these newer game systems, but back then it was grand. and Street Fighter 2. I knew basically every single move for every combatant, and loved it. And I'm still pretty fierce on Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Adventure Island, a great Nintendo game, and also they made some great Super Nintendo games. There was a baseball game with robots fighting. I'm not sure if that was Super Nintendo or Nintendo, but that was fun. And I played a whole bunch of Super Caesar's Palace, all the different gambling games, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts, another incredible title. Once again, probably a little too challenging, and I don't remember any of the specifics, but I know I played it quite a lot. And like most people, I probably didn't get too far. But I did spend kind of an incredible amount of time playing Caesar's Palace. They had lots of different gambling games you could play. And for a time when it was popular to have poker on TV, I found myself sitting around watching poker a lot. So maybe I should play some poker, I guess, nowadays. Because we played cards a lot when I was in high school with my friends. This was before the internet or anything. We were quite bored, not really much to do except sit around and play cards. That's probably where my fondness comes from. Just growing up and having fun playing poker. And once I tried it on the computer and did pretty well. Actually, I made a lot of money, fake money, on the computer one time against real opponents. So maybe I could have had a future in gambling if I would have gotten into poker. There's no future in gambling. Super Mario Kart, I wish I owned it. Never owned it. Played it kind of a moderate amount. Had fun with it, but never owned it. I watched somebody play Super Mario RPG, but I didn't own it or play it. But I did play Super Mario World for who knows how many hundreds of hours. And Metroid on Super Nintendo, I didn't play quite as much as Metroid on Nintendo. Oh, my nose itches. But that was just from not owning it. I had the Metroid on Game Boy. It didn't translate. You can't really create an eerie atmosphere with no color. And I know it was a well-regarded game, but I really wish that I could have devoted that playtime to Super Metroid instead of Metroid 2 on Game Boy. Alright, Super Punch-Out! It's another one that I played more on the regular Nintendo, but I'm a huge fan, and I went back and revisited it a few times. One I should have had more fun with was Super R-Type, but I didn't really play it. And rounding it out with maybe some Turtles in Time. I did spend my time playing Turtles in Time, and I had forgotten until now about the fighting game they did called Tournament Fighters. So they did put all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles into a fighting game. I think Terminator 2 is an on-rails shooter, which was pretty groundbreaking for the time. And there were lots of other successful games. I've kind of just skipped through and done a little bit of talking about things that really were exciting to me. But overall, I have nothing but good memories of the Super Nintendo console. Even though I had a PlayStation, it didn't see a lot of playtime. Wolfenstein I played on the computer, and I didn't really ever play Doom. But a bit later I got into some of the other first-person shooters and enjoyed them quite a lot. So it was maybe the last system when I was like what I would consider a hardcore gamer. And for me, that period of time was so enjoyable. it's nice to just spend a couple of moments reminiscing and speaking with all of you about it. So, maybe I should go and download that Diablo 3 right now. Thanks for watching.